Call the roll. Trustee Borninski,
Good evening.
Foster,
Good evening.
Ganguly,
Good evening.
Graham Hudak is attending virtually, so non-voting member today. Let the record reflect the clerk Segrist is in attendance. Treasurer Slavens,
Good evening.
Trustee Snyderman,
I am here as well.
and for the Planning Commission, Commissioner Achaya is not here.
Yeah, Commissioners Acharya, Singh, and Watkins had previously notified staff that they would not be able to attend this evening.
Okay.
Beautiful. All right, Eggenberger,
Yes? Oh, here we
Aye.
go, yes.
Foster twice.
I'm still here.
In both capacities. Green. Here. Oken. Here. Weber. Here. And finally, Zuber. All right, beautiful. At this moment, prior to adopting the agenda, I would love to entertain a motion from one of the township trustees to appoint Treasurer Slavens as President pro tempore for the duration of the meeting in the absence of the supervisor.
I move that Treasurer Slavens become the President Pro Tem of this meeting.
Is there any support for that motion?
Support.
Excellent. There's been a nomination. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Beautiful. Although it's been moved by Trustee Snyderman, supported by Trustee Borninski, that Treasurer Slavens be the President pro tempore for the remainder of the meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, the ayes have it. The meeting is yours, Treasurer Slavens.
Okay, thank you very much, Clerk Segrist. I want to welcome everybody to the joint meeting, Canton Board of Trustees and Canton Planning Commission. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right.
Michael.
And I'm going to turn this over to Director Smith.
Thank you, Treasurer Slavens. This is going to be really quick on my part, but I do want to welcome everybody tonight. Glad everybody's here. We've got our great planning crew here tonight. I'll let them all introduce themselves. But we've been working on getting this master plan kicked off for quite some time and really looking forward to tonight's discussion. So Patrick, I'll let you take it from here.
Hi, thank you. Patrick Sloan, Community Planner. The last time we had a joint session was in late August to talk about some of the items that we wanted to include in the master plan as we get ready to launch. So we're happily here, back here a few months later. We have some new staff and we have our planning consultants on board. So we're ready to get things kicked off and very excited about it.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. My name is Erin Schluto. I'm a senior planner at Canton Township.
Hi, I'm Ashley Amy, and I am a planning intern.
Thank you. My name is Erin McCarger, and I'm also a planning intern.
Okay, now and we're very happy to turn it over to McKenna.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vidya Krishnan. I am a senior principal planner at McKenna, and I'm the project lead for the Canton Township's master plan project. I apologize for not being in person there in front of you. I am struggling with a severe viral cold, and I am not yet past the infectious period. I don't want to make anyone sick, so I'm communicating with you via Zoom today. With me today at the meeting are my colleagues, Paul Erbil and also Jean Dixon. In addition to Paul and Jane, we have a whole host of McKenna staff, which includes GIS, graphics, and other experts who will be helping us in this project to try and get the Canton Township's master plan to a finish line. To start off, first of all, I know the concept of a master plan is something new here. So what exactly is a master plan and why are we here today? Simply put, a master plan is your vision for the future of your community. Now, Canton Township has planned its land use for the last 15 years, but you have never really created a land use plan or a future land use plan from scratch until now. This is the first time the township is following the master plan process, which will lay out what do we value in our community. where should these different types of land uses be located? How will such development impact our environment? How is all this development going to affect our infrastructure? That's what the master plan does. It creates a vision for the municipality for the future. The question does come up often, why do we need to plan? I mean, why can't we take it as and when it comes? In order for any plan to be successful in life, you have got to prepare for it. Businesses, before they operate, have a business plan of operation, which basically lays out the products they intend to sell and the market that they are targeting. Farmers need to plan for what they are going to plant based upon the climate and the soil types in order to know what they're going to harvest, which will be a successful crop. Even something as simple as a graduation party requires extensive planning on the part of the parents, from catering to the tents. So when even the smallest of events requires so much planning, it makes it that much more important when we are talking about something as big as an entire municipality or a community, that we plan for our collective future so that we know where we are headed. Now, town planning is an ancient tradition. This is not something that has developed only over the past few decades or is a recent novelty. Early towns were planned to take advantage of the resources. One of the most important natural resources is water. Without water, life cannot be sustained. So the early civilizations and developments were built around rivers and around water bodies because you used irrigation in order to grow your crops. Some of the towns were situated to defend themselves against invaders or against the enemies, such as placing a town or a settlement up on a hill so you can see for miles along to see if an enemy is approaching you. Some towns were located along trade routes, such as the famous Silk Route, which was designed in order to take advantage of the trade routes through Asia and the Middle East. So town planning is not something that is recent. It is something that has got deep, steep history. There is a reason why planning is done, and it has evolved over a period of time. Now, the master plan is a document, but this document is required under Public Act 33 of 2008, which is also referred to commonly as the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, that basically requires municipalities to review and update the plan every 5 years. And the reason you have to do it is your master plan is the one that provides you a basis for all your zoning regulations. Without a master plan, there is no zoning. You need to have justification to have zoning, and that justification is provided by your master plan. So it is exactly what we call it. It is a vision for what your municipality will look like in the next 10 to 20 years. And this vision has to be a consensus of the people who live here, who live, work, stay here. It has to be their vision because they are the ones who will be impacted by what happens in the future. And a vision is of no use if you don't have steps to say how the vision translates into reality. And that brings us to the goals and objectives. That is an important aspect or a chapter in your master plan. So basically, what we will be doing over the next 18 months is setting forth the vision of where we want Canton to be in the next 10 to 20 years, how it's going to look, and what are the steps that we are going to take to get over there. What the master plan is not, quite often there is misinformation out there. The master plan is not the law. The zoning ordinance is the law, the rules that must be followed. The master plan is just a guidebook. It is a vision statement. It is not a basis for property tax assessment. Just because a property is master planned for something doesn't mean correspondingly the taxes are going to go up. The taxes go up only when the zoning changes on it. And the master plan is not permanent. Master plan is an ever-evolving document, which is why state law sets forth that it has to be revisited every 5 years to accurately reflect the changes in the community. The master plan provides a future's insight. Basically, you start with inventory of all the assets that you have. What are the woodland areas you have? What are the natural features you have? What are the commercial hubs you have? What are the growth trends? Is this an aging community? Is your 60-plus-year-old population increasing more dramatically, or are the young families increasing, which changes the aspect of uses that you're looking at. If it's younger families, you need to have more active recreation. You would need to have more schools, facilities, bus transportation. If it's an older, aging community, you have to plan accordingly. And the master plan does that. It actually explores where the various parts of the community might have access to the resources and where the community is lacking. And that's what this future insight, like they say, history always tends to repeat itself, right? You need to know where you have come from in order to know where you're headed. And that is what the master plan's basis is. It's very interesting to see how Canton Township has grown. Now, I have been a resident of Canton for about 18 years now. And in these 18 years, I have seen the community dramatically change. I can only imagine those of you who have lived here longer or who were raised here, how much more dramatic the change is. A brief study on the history of how Canton has evolved. So the next few slides examines one area of the township. This is just a representative area, not for any particular significance. The reason we picked it is Canton Center is literally the center of the township, and Ford Road is our main commercial hub corridor. In 1949, as you can see on the aerial diagram on your screen, it was mostly agricultural fields. This was all farmlands with one odd home. And people who lived in this area drove either to downtown Plymouth or Cherry Hill Village to get whatever little goods and services they needed. And driving to Ann Arbor or going to Detroit was a full day's trip. It was like a plan. It was like what we call today just going up north. We just get into the car and hop on to Mackinac Island. It used to be a full day's trip in 1949 to just go up to Ann Arbor. Forward 15 years later, in 1961, you can already see the subtle changes in the map. This is the post-World War II baby boom taking place. The fortunate or unfortunate consequence of war is always the need to rebuild. War destroys things, and after war, there is always a rebuilding effort. And this rebuilding effort spanned across the globe. And we, Canton, one municipality in Michigan, in the larger context of the world, also felt the difference. Many farmers started selling their land to residential developers, and larger tracts of agricultural land were divided, broken up into smaller parts, and sold to individuals who actually wanted to build their homes in this area and continue living over here. This was within a span of 15 years, from agricultural to smaller lots starting to be created. Forward another 13 years, 1974, you can already see the early subdivisions being laid out. There is a road network which is clearly visible with cul-de-sac. Developers began building entire neighborhoods of homes. There were not just individual isolated homes being built. You started seeing series of 100, 200 homes being built in a grouping. One of the earliest commercial superstores, Meijer, acquired the land at the corner of Ford and Canton Center. And because they knew that with all these new homes being built, there would be a need for these people to go somewhere to get their groceries and all their services. So Meijer acquired the land, and further east on this map in 1974, Interstate 275 got under construction as one of the major arterials that transected north to south. From 1974, jump forward another 7 years to 1981. You can see how, as the timeline is reducing, 15 years to 13 years, now in just additional 7 years, the open space continues to get filled in by new neighborhoods. You can see how much more it is spreading further to the west. In the previous slide you saw, if you look at the previous slide, you still have it only on both sides of Sheldon Road. And further north, that's where you see the development. But 7 years later, you can see the north side starting to get filled up with subdivisions. Subdivisions are now growing further west of Sheldon and even further west of Canton Center. New shopping plazas started coming up along Ford Road corridor, which sort of started cementing its whole being as the major commercial thoroughfare of this area. All this growth and development, however, was intended for people with cars. This was not unique just to Canton. Having suburbs with all these shopping complexes and all these shopping plazas was considered state-of-the-art development in the 1980s. Driving up and having automotive-centric shopping was considered the in thing at the time, and development patterns kept up with the trends of the time. Moving from 1981, fast forward a good 24 years to 2005, all of the remaining Canton Township's open space is now developed. And Ford Road is not merely a local shopping district, it has now become a regional shopping destination. It's lined with many, many big box stores. And the following year, 2006, IKEA, which, as you're all familiar with, is a Swedish furniture company that selectively locates its stores. Most states have just one or two of these mega stores. IKEA realized what the value of the growth is and located their hub on the northwest corner of Haggerty and Ford Road in 2006. So slowly but surely, development started taking over all of these years. If you try to remember what you saw from 1949 to 2005, you can see that growth and development are inevitable. It just comes with time. What we can do is plan for that growth so that it takes place in an orderly fashion, and it helps and supports those who live and call this place home. To get to that final spot where we have this master plan, this visioning document, involves a lot of entities. We, as your consultants who have been hired to sort of steer this ship, we are just one small part of the larger machinery that actually gets this process moving and rolling. And each and every component of this whole thing have their own roles and responsibilities. We start first with a group that would be created called the Master Plan Advisory Board. This Master Plan Advisory Board will advise the staff, the township staff, who are the ones, Patrick, Erin, Ashley, and Erin Jr., they are the ones who will be sort of the hub through which all of the information circulates. The Master Plan Advisory Board is the one who would advise staff and the consultants on what public engagement activities would be the important ones to target, or what are the underrepresented groups in the township. One of the things that I really love about living in Canton is how diverse it is. I mean, you have people of all nationalities, all ethnic groups, all religions. We have churches, we have temples, we have mosques. The diversity of this community is just incredible. All of us yet call it home because we all feel very much like we belong over here. However, even with the best efforts, there often are some groups that might tend to get overlooked in this process. And the Master Plan Advisory Board's role would be to make sure that each and every group that has an interest in the future of this community is represented and their feedback received. The Master Plan Advisory Board will be comprised of some members of Planning Commission, some from the Board of Trustees, the township staff, consultants. They will attend the public engagement and activities. Those will be attended by the consultants and the staff, and by the other members of the advisory board wherever feasible. They will act as ambassadors. They are the ones who will let their neighbors know that we are out to do this process, and if you hear any misinformation out there, you would be the ones who would be correcting it and saying, no, the master plan is not the law. It is a vision document that is going to tell us where we are going. This advisory board will also review data and recommendations that we will collect and provide, and the board would give us back your feedback so that we can make inferences towards the goals and objectives from the data that we have collected. The next group that has got a very, very important role to play would be the Planning Commission. In fact, there are multiple boards and commissions involved, but the Planning Commission will have to take on the brunt of the work, not just being an advisorial, ambassadorial, and a public engagement functions, same as the Master Plan Advisory Board, but they have to follow the procedure as dictated by the Planning Enabling Act. They will direct staff in order to make sure that the public hearing notices are in the papers, that the master plan draft documents, when they are ready, are distributed to all the stakeholders, neighboring municipalities, and affected entities. They will review the information that has been fine-tuned by the Master Plan Advisory Board with the consultants and staff, and they will provide feedback saying, we think you need to look at this aspect of the master plan again, or we believe this is not really an accurate reflection. They will review the maps and the data that is supplied and provide for feedback on it, and will guide the formation of the future land use plan map and the future policies. They will participate in all the joint meetings that are held with the township board in order to provide direction on sensitive or controversial planning topics, or to provide even guidance on the key areas. For instance, the Planning Commission would provide insights to us on the Cherry Hill Village. The township is actively trying to make Cherry Hill Village more vibrant. It has got tons of homes, but the commercial development around there doesn't really keep up with the amount of households that we have in that area, except for a few households, a few restaurants, ice cream parlors, and a few pet grooming shops. There is not really much to do over there. So how to bring Cherry Hill Village back to the fore as our core downtown, how to address the future development of Ford Road when it becomes a boulevard intersection. Those are the important and sensitive core node areas that the Planning Commission will direct the conversation to. The Planning Commission, in addition to that, will have the role of having public hearing, just like you hold the public hearing for any special land uses at this time. Same way, the Planning Commission is the one that will direct the staff or work with staff in order to make sure all the public hearing notices are published on time, public comment is received, the comment is transmitted to the consultants, and necessary changes are made. And it would be the Planning Commission's responsibility to make a recommendation on the master plan draft document for adoption to the Township Board of Trustees. In some municipalities, the Planning Commission adopts the master plan. However, most municipalities are moving away from that. And the adoption of the master plan in 90+% of the cases, and in all the clients that I handle, is left up to the Board of Trustees or the City Council or whatever the elected official body is. And the reason for doing this is not because the Planning Commission is not the one who is doing all the detailed work. The vision document ultimately has to be signed off on by the elected officials who are elected by the people. So they are the ones who are ratifying the vision of the community. The Planning Commission will then be the body that will work towards the implementation by changing the zoning ordinance to reflect what the master plan's vision is. Now, the Township Board, once again, will do the same thing. They will be the ambassadors for this master plan project. They will educate the public. I'm sure the Board of Trustees are the ones who receive emails or calls from their constituents saying, what's going on over here? Or what's happening? You know, are you changing something on my property? And the Township Board of Trustees are the ones who will bring the information out and say, no, this is something we are working on. The board will be the one that will adopt the master plan, which will make it the official document. The board will participate in joint meetings with the Planning Commission so that any issues that come up that are contentious, we need to make sure that everybody is on the same plane. If the consultants work with the township staff and come up with certain strategies for addressing, say, let's talk about the intersection of Beck and Ford Road. That is a very difficult intersection. I drive past there almost daily, and it's like turning left turn to head west on Ford Road is like playing chicken. I'm like, should I go? Should I not go? What's going to come in the corner over there? If we start discussing details of nodes like that, your planning staff and we as the consultants might have certain recommendations and suggestions for how the design of that corner or that node needs to be developed. And the Planning Commission would then provide their insight to say what they think will work or not work. And the Township Board of Trustees will provide their perspective as elected officials. And we want to make sure that all of the different viewpoints are resolved into coming up with a common vision for that particular corner. So that when the final document comes up, All of us can take ownership to say, yes, that is the collective vision of the entire group that put together this document to say what our vision for that corner is. The master plan has got numerous components. It is a very wordy document, but every aspect of that document has got a key role to play. First and foremost, and that would be data analysis. You need to have background data to know where you're heading. And the background data, some of it is collected from SEMCOG. SEMCOG will tell you how the population has grown over the past 40, 50 years, how the demographics have changed. What is the population composition? As I previously mentioned, is it seniors? Is it young families? Is it middle-aged people like me? They need to find out what exactly is the population's composition. What is Canton's position relative to the regional context? How do we fit in when we compare ourselves to Plymouth Township, Northville, Superior, Van Buren, Westland, or Romulus? In the regional context with I-94, I-96, I-275, how does Canton fare? What are our natural assets? We all have creeks, multiple Wayne County drains and creeks going. These drains and creeks provide very important riparian habitat, but they also create a lot of challenges for development in Canton, simply because of flooding and other issues based on Canton's clay soil type. What are the existing land uses? On the surface of it, if somebody asked any one of you today, what uses do you have in Canton? Our reply will be, ask whatever you want, and we probably have it in Canton. However, we do need to take an inventory to see just how many of a particular use do we have. For a population of 100,000, do we have 75 hair salons? Do we really need that many hair salons? I mean, do we have playing arcade? If we have 20% of our population as the younger teen crowd, do they have a place to go to where they can be entertained? Or do we have just Super Bowl, Canton Super Bowl? Is that the only, or ZAP zone? Is that the sum total of all that we have for that population? So an existing land use inventory will tell us what are the uses we are missing that might help support the various population groups that we have. What type of population is living in Canton? And market studies. Market studies are very important, and Canton Township had recently had a market study done, but on a limited basis just for the Cherry Hill Village area for its economy. We do a market study on not as detailed an aspect, but a broader blush of the whole township. Our primary corridors would be, commercial corridors would be Ford Road and Michigan Avenue. We also have Canton Center, which starts spreading from commercial at the corner of Ford and Canton Center. As you move further north and further south, it becomes more office type of uses, medical offices and other type of uses. We have near Coppernick area, it is predominantly our industrial development area, as is the south side of Michigan Avenue, near Research Drive. So we need to see what kind of industries we have. Do we need to plan for any other type of industries, especially industries that have spawned due to technological advancements? The automotive industry, all of Metro Detroit is one way or the other impacted by the automotive industry. We are Motor City for a reason. Is there any advancement in technology, such as self-driven vehicles, EV vehicles? Is there anything that is causing an advancement in automotive technology that needs to be provided for in a support function in our municipality? Do we have to plan for any of these industries to come in here? Because zoning, the way it is written, our zoning ordinance, if a use is not specifically listed in a district, it means the use is not permitted. So we want to make sure that we are not excluding a use that we actually would welcome into our township as something that would add to the quality of life and towards our tax base. So that is what the data analysis and the background information, which is collected right at the onset of the master plan project, helps us with. From the data analysis, the next and probably the most vital and important component of the master plan would be the public participation and community outreach. We will go over this more in detail once my presentation is over, but this is how you come to know what your residents want. This is done old-fashioned through community surveys. We can have them up on the Canton Township's website. We will have community workshops where we will have all-day roundtable discussions where people can just walk in. We will advertise it. They can walk into Township Hall. We'll set up a meeting room. They can come, offer their viewpoints. We can have specific stakeholder interviews. We already did one of those a couple of weeks ago, which was organized wonderfully by Erin, your senior planner. She set up a stakeholder meeting with the Plymouth Canton Community Schools Social Justice Club. These are the high school students. It is a small core group of students, but who are very vocal and very active in the community in terms of how the community is evolving. They are very much in tune with what the youth of today want and what they expect to see in the future. So having that one-on-one interaction with them helped open up our eyes to certain aspects that we had not previously considered. Similarly, we expect to do stakeholder interviews with maybe senior population in senior housing, the business corridor, all the businesses and developers who own land over here, the various groups we want to make sure. And in addition to that, the public outreach is also done through social events. One of our biggest festivals, the Liberty Fest, is coming up next weekend. Yay, I missed it for the last 2 years. So we will be out in full force with a tent near the amphitheater, just near the clock tower, actually. We are going to set up a booth. We will be there throughout the 3 days. We will take it in shifts between staff and the consultants to interact with residents who are coming there. We are hopeful everybody has to pass by our booth in order to get to the popcorn, lemonade, and the elephant ear. So we should get a good slice of the population coming by in order to tell us their vision. We will make sure to have boards over there that will give them an idea of what the master plan is in simple words, and then we intend to engage them. In addition to this, we have a whole list of activities, farmers market attendance, maybe the international festival at Cherry Hill Village that takes place at the Village Theater, Pride on the Ridge, and maybe the Village Art Factory, maybe they have some of their art sales, we might go over there. So there are numerous opportunities, and we will take advantage of as many of these opportunities as feasible in order to reach the public at large. The public engagement activities, I summarized some of these. These are a detail of what has been put together by township staff, and it is extensive and thorough. Tonight is our first kickoff meeting. We will next be at Liberty Fest, where I hope I would get an opportunity to meet all of you and I would get rid of my sinus infection by then. We will be at Pride Outside, Rally on the Ridge. There will be recorded educational videos, and we will also possibly make this webinar available to the residents so they can listen to it at their leisure to understand what it is. Stakeholder discussions with the various groups, also drone surveys, maybe Zoom chats, do a walking tour of Cherry Hill Village, and then outcome of all of this will be the draft master plan, which will then go for public hearings and then adoption. We are looking at a process where eventually the master plan will be adopted by December 2023. It does seem like a really long timeline, but this is a guiding document that will make all the difference for Canton's growth in the future. So taking the time to make sure that each and every one of the stakeholders and the active people who are in the community are involved in this process is very, very important. The township-wide framework, part of the thing that we will be looking at in the master plan is what areas of Canton Township should we keep exactly the same? What do we like about it that we are going to keep? What do we enhance? Keep the same, but make it better than what it is today. What would we like to change by adding or changing the whole use of the area? Whatever the use is, maybe it was established in the 70s and 80s and it no longer works. Maybe this is an area you want to revisit and redevelop. Those are the areas we will be exploring in the master plan, and we will look at it. All 36 square miles of the township will be investigated for this. Once we investigate it, the roadmap for the future will be designed by having goals and objectives. These goals and objectives, basically, it will say, this is a goal and objective, and these are the steps how we are going to get to it. We will have a future land use plan. The Planning Commission, and I'm sure several of the Board of Trustees are also familiar with your zoning map, which is color coded. Each color code represents a particular type of zoning, which tells you what are the uses that can be permitted in that particular zone. Similarly, the master plan will have something called as a future land use plan map. Some of the districts in the zoning map and the future land use plan map will match. For example, existing single-family residential neighborhoods that are established, such as the Sunflower subdivision or the Glengarry Village or Fairway Pines, all of these are established subdivisions. They are currently possibly zoned R3 or R2. They will be marked in the future land use plan map as single-family residential. They will remain the same. Some of the areas, the zoning, recommended zoning might change. We will have a transportation plan, an important component of the master plan itself. And this is planning beyond the automobile. When we say transportation plan, this is not merely vehicular transportation. This is talking about pedestrian transportation. This is a mobility plan. How are the different modes of transport and mobility within the township affected? And finally, a zoning plan. A zoning plan is required under state law to be part of your master plan. Without the zoning plan is basically an action plan. That's simply put, the zoning plan is an action plan. Your entire master plan, the data gathering, your goals and objectives, all of your vision statements will be condensed into the zoning plan, which will tell you how you're going to implement all that you have collected so far into the zoning ordinance, which becomes the law. So the zoning plan will be the last and most important component of your master plan document itself. This is an action plan. This is an example, or we also like to call it the implementation plan. It is an important component because it gives the Board of Trustees and the Planning Commission sort of a roadmap. This helps you with this action plan. It helps you in your budgets for the future. Say the action plan says we need to have more pedestrian connectivity at the corner of Beck and Ford Road. Right now, anyone trying to cross over there is a narrow bridge on the north side. There is really no sidewalk. You have to actually walk into the main roadway in order to cross over onto the grass sides of the road, right of way to get past. So if your pedestrian plan, if the master plan advocates more pedestrian walkability connectivity, the action plan will actually have that as an item. And this will help the Board of Trustees plan for the future and prioritize how to pay for it. It will tell you whether you intend to apply for a grant. Is this going to be done in partnership with, say, NDOT, such as the Ford Road project? Ford Road project is being done in a partnership with NDOT. Is it going to be through private funds that are donated? Or is this going to be done through a TIF or a DDA district fund generation? Or is this going to be done through a millage? So this action plan will give you a roadmap of how you can pay for all of the improvements that your master plan is advocating. There are several important elements in a community. Community is a term very loosely used. We just say Canton community. But what is a community? A community is made up of neighborhoods. And neighborhoods defined simply are specific areas where people live. Sometimes they also go to work there, they shop there, and they go to school there. For instance, people who live in Glengarry Village or on Fairway Pines or Central Park, their neighborhood would be the Ford Road Canton Center neighborhood. Their kids go to, say, Workman Elementary or Dodson Elementary, Liberty Middle School, and then they funnel from there into PSEP, the high school. So this becomes the small neighborhood within which all of their activity is done. Some of these, when you go for shopping, tend to be larger than just your immediate neighborhood, whereas some others are smaller. Sometimes neighborhoods are defined by how far can you walk pushing a stroller, maybe a mile, right? After that, you have to put the stroller in your vehicle and drive to the nearby park. You also try to think of what makes your neighborhood unique when compared to others. So neighborhood defines the various areas of the township. And the reason to define neighborhoods is to find out how and where a neighborhood is lacking in amenities that might be available in surplus elsewhere. One of the things we did receive feedback when we spoke to the students at PSET, was that there aren't enough parks for neighborhoods on the east side of the township, east of I-275. When you go to Ford Road, that area, they're like, well, we don't have as many recreational amenities or facilities as you have further west in the township. There's a reason for that, because those areas got developed first. So the land got all built up with existing use, not leaving much room for public amenities, which were then planned for as the development started moving further west. From neighborhoods, we go to corridors, and this would be Ford Road corridor. When we say Ford Road corridor, we are talking possibly all the way from Lots up to Canton Center or up to Beck. You're talking about Canton Center Road corridor. You would be saying all the way from Palmer, where St. Joseph Mercy is, you take it all the way up to Warren. That might be your Canton Center Road corridor. Corridors are basically the major pathways through which neighborhoods get connected to each other. And this is where you place all the businesses and attractions, because you know people are going to be traversing these corridors back and forth. So we need to identify what are these important corridors within the township. Some are more important than others. So we need to identify and prioritize what these corridors might be. From corridors, we go to nodes. Nodes are basically a pinpoint. It is an interesting location in a community. It is a hub where activity takes place. For instance, you would call Cherry Hill Village a node. Cherry Hill Village, where you have Denton intersecting with Cherry Hill Road, you have the old schoolhouse there, that can be a node. You have the Village Theater, you have Cold Stone Creamery. There are major roads that intersect over there, and it is a place where there is activity and stuff takes place. But that is one that came immediately to mind. But are there other nodes which help people congregate or are an important part or a place of gathering? That is something we need to explore. I would say the Heritage Park Amphitheater is probably classified as a node. It is where people from all over the community gather together when you have either art in the park or you have summer music time in the park. It is where people tend to congregate. So identifying the nodes is also important. From there, we move to streets and public spaces. Public spaces basically are outdoor rooms. And these rooms, the walls are basically the buildings that fan them on either side. We navigate these spaces from one to the other by having plaza areas, by creating places where, say, you buy an ice cream and you sit down and have the ice cream in a little plaza area. A small example is the small plaza that is at the corner of CVS at Cherry Hill and Canton Center. It is a mini plaza area. You have CVS and you have a strip commercial center there, but if you want to get something and you want to sit on the street corner, there are a few benches. It is a place where people can, just relax and just hang out in their community. How can we design a community so that all users can benefit? It shouldn't benefit just people who are in cars. And that is where your streetscape design comes in. While municipality or a community might be designed overall to be automotive centric, you can break it up into smaller components to make it pedestrian centric, bike friendly, also catering to other types of users. Housing types. Very, very important in today's context when home prices are rising dramatically. If you just look at your own home price, if you live in Canton and you see the price as how real estate has been increasing over here, it is mind-boggling. Most housing Canton today is either an individual single-family house or it is an apartment building. There are various other types of housing. You have duplexes, you have fourplexes, you can even have row houses, you have townhouses. There are a few in Cherry Hill Village, but they are not predominant in other parts of the community. A mix of residential types is very, very important in order to cater not only to all demographics, but to also all income groups. There was a time when the phrase affordable housing was the key term to use. It has now been changed to attainable housing. For various income groups, what price point is considered as attainable for, say, somebody, a young professional who just wants a studio apartment. Do we have enough type of housing to facilitate it for them? What about a young family who are working in just starter jobs, who have 2 little kids? They might not be able to afford some of these new single family homes that are being built at 3,000 and 4,000 square feet. We need to be able to provide for all types of housing in order to attract and retain our population, especially the younger population. Another interesting outcome that came in our conversations with the high school students, we were surprised, and they said, our parental generation, which is us, they said parental generation always had the dream to have a home in suburbia with a 2-car garage. That's not what we want. We want a loft, hip, cool type of housing. We don't want as much floor area. We want home to be a place where we come to sleep and, a place to take shelter in. We want to spend more of our time outdoors. We want to be out in the community, exploring the various businesses, exploring the parks and the amenities. We are not as interested in sitting inside the house and just watching TV or, just hanging out inside the space because you have so much space built into your structure. We found that to be very interesting. And many of them said, you don't really have any of those kind of houses for us to buy. If we were to graduate tomorrow and get a job, we don't see too many types of housing that you can attract a young single person to come in and stay over here. So the potential types of housing is another aspect that we will explore in the master plan. One of the case studies, very important case study, and one of, I think, a shining jewel, what Canton has already, is Cherry Hill Village. The design at the time it was designed was such a novel concept. You had different types of housing. You had attached housing, you had detached housing, you had homes with alleyways behind them with garaged as a detached accessory building. And now we also have the uptown apartments. So Cherry Hill Village is actually a little bit of everything combined together, but it is in one part of the township. What can we do in order to make it more widespread? Now, over time, neighborhoods grow and neighborhoods change. New housing types can be added. Maybe right now our zoning is very absolute in saying this is a single family residential neighborhood only. It does not allow for accommodations for duplexes. In 20 years, we will be making a choice of where we live, work, invest our time and money. The younger generation will. What would they like to see? What would the next generation or people who are growing older like to see? Would we, as the generation that is growing older, want to have the responsibility of taking care of a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot home? Or we don't want to live in an assisted living or an independent living facility. We would like to live in a quadruplex, maybe, 4 little homes tied together, its own little unit. Do we have any of such kind of housing? If you don't provide for the types of housing for your growing or your aging population, people simply tend to move out of the community, which is not what we want. At the end of the day, it's all about passion. The master plan is a project that is about as clear a reflection of a community's passion for building up its own future. The goal of all of the public engagement sessions, the design charrettes, going to all meetings, getting people involved, be it through online surveys, interviewing them, attending public events, making some fun events where even young kids can be involved in it. It's all about trying to come up with the answers that will help guide us towards the master plan that we want. That is the sum total of what we wanted to present as a fundamental of what is the master plan and why we plan for the future. I hope that actually gave all of you some idea of how you will be involved in this process that is going to span the next 18 months towards helping develop that vision document. We are now happy to answer questions. Paul and Jane are present over there along with Patrick and Erin to help guide any discussion, any questions that you might have. And between all of us, we are more than happy to be able to answer those for you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Vida, for the wonderful presentation. It's giving us a lot to think about. Does anybody have any comments, questions? Yes.
Pointed out, basically, we have planned in our existence, but we have not, we've never looked at the master plan from scratch. And so that's an interesting concept, considering we're maybe, 90% built out? But I think I understand the principle behind it, because it can allow us to see where we can go rather than getting stuck in the muck of what we've already done. So, but it's gonna be hard to do. You know, it's hard to think of Ford Road other than what we already know of Ford Road. Any ideas as to how that can expand our vision on this? I'm intrigued with starting all over again.
Yes, I agree. I don't know if anybody from McKenna or Patrick, if you want to give any thoughts or ideas regarding that. It is a...
Sure. As Vidya had noted, a lot of our residential neighborhoods, when we look at them, we'll probably look at many of them as, in the future, they'll continue to be residential neighborhoods with the same density, open space, et cetera, that they have. But we will be going through that process of looking through everything, and where there are opportunities for potential improvements, that's what will yield in the public engagement and through our analysis. With us being mostly built out, it's also left a lot of infill pieces that are smaller, harder to develop. There may have been reasons over the last several decades that they weren't developed, and opportunities for either future development or future preservation or recreation activities. And those are areas that we're going to be looking at closely as well. So overall, it'll just be a comprehensive look at, as Vidya said, all 36 square miles of the township, and really look at where we are with those and come up with a future plan.
You know, one thing I was wondering, like with Ford Road, because it's all built up, eventually some of these box stores are going to probably be obsolete. And I would imagine maybe with the master plan, we could discuss things like retrofitting some of those buildings, changing them from box stores to maybe apartments or condominiums. I mean, is that kind of something that will be in the discussion?
That is an excellent point. That is an excellent point, and that is a planning tool that is called greenfield development. You must have heard of brownfield development, where you redevelop a contaminated piece of land. But greenfield development is when you try to retrofit something that has become obsolete. A good example will be, I don't know how many of you remember the mall that is that used to be in Livonia on Merriman. There was this huge mall that had Montgomery Ward, Value City, and all those other big box stores. All of those stores went away. The mall was vacant for a while. And if you go there right now, it is just amazing. It has been changed into condos, lots, a small mixed use development. They have retrofitted the whole thing. So yes, it's a very good point that Canton is mostly already built out, but some of the big box retail that have been established in the 1970s and 80s slowly but surely are becoming obsolete. We need to be able to plan what happens when they stop working, when they close their doors down. Then what happens? You have this huge box sitting over there occupying critical commercial space. What can we do to it? Maybe it can be demolished and rebuilt as something else. Maybe it can be retrofitted. So those are, that is why we would plan for in the master plan. And that is one aspect. It looks like we are all built out, but there are planning tools for that too.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Summer?
I was wondering if Aaron could touch
a little bit more on the conversation that she had with the Social Justice Club at the high school. I thought there were some really interesting nuggets that we learned about that at the Planning Commission meeting.
Yeah, so we met with the Social Justice Club mid to late May, and Vidya was there, and she gave a very similar presentation as she gave to you this evening, albeit it was a little bit shorter because their attention spans are much shorter. But they were very engaged. We were very blown away at the involvement and the engagement of the students and how involved they were and how socially conscious they were. So they did have a number of thoughts, and we had some stock questions ready to go for them, so that way we could continue and make sure we had an involved and engaged discussion. So in addition to asking them, what do you like about Canton, but we asked them some things, would they want to stay in Canton? If they grow up, get their jobs, get their careers in place, do they see themselves living here in the long term? And the majority of them said no. So that was really interesting. And one of the driving forces was because Canton Township doesn't have kind of a technology innovative corridor. There aren't those types of jobs that are here. They're more in Ann Arbor, Detroit, but they're not necessarily here. Another student had made comments about the housing choices. And Vidya touched upon that in her presentation as well, that they were not interested in the 2,000 plus square foot homes detached. Some of them were actually interested in the micro units or the mini apartments that are becoming more and more popular. So that was interesting to hear from them growing up in more of a suburban 2,000 square foot home, that's not something that they're interested in. So that was really interesting, and they had a lot of really great feedback, not only in terms of that, but wanting to have more diverse, spread out opportunities for parks and recreation opportunities. They feel that it's a little bit more clustered. And as culturally diverse as this community is on paper, they noted that it's not as much as it seems. They are pocketed in groups, not only in their school, but they have illuminated the issue that there are also pockets within our community as well. So that's something that we need to look at a little bit more closely and consider when we do some future planning. I will say that they were a great group of students, and a couple of them have reached out to me to be more involved in this master plan process and have expressed interest in serving on the master plan advisory board. So we were very, very happy to hear that not only were they interested in the project that we brought before them, but they want to continue being involved in this community as well.
Michael?
I think this is like the coolest thing in the world. Part of that is because I'm super nerdy. But we don't talk enough about planning and zoning and how it impacts almost everything we do. I hate the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act because I think it fosters racism. Plain and simple. By requiring development to be consistent with ancillary or parallel zoning, you are ensuring that people in high-density areas live near other people in high-density areas, and people with large lots live near other people with large lots. The nature of how Southeast Michigan developed, planning is at the core of everything. There are other places, in London, for example, where it is illegal to exercise the same kind of zoning and planning that we do here in Michigan. They require parcels from different socioeconomic backgrounds all be planned and built next to each other to force us to live near each other, to avoid our natural instinct to congregate near people who have the same amount of money as us, the same color skin as us, worship at the same locations as us. But the law is the law. I had a conversation about, you'll drive around in Canton, for example, and you'll be like, I don't like this. You don't really understand why. someone should have done something about this, but you never really understand who or what could be done or why we are kind of where we are. I talked recently with somebody about how the individual Canton fractional school districts were absorbed by the Plymouth Canton School District, which at the time was called the Plymouth School District, in 1951. I said, that's an obscure fact, but it's not. Because why did Plymouth absorb all of the smaller school districts in Canton? Because up to that point, you would have been educated in a one-room schoolhouse. But something happened in 1944. The World War ended, people came home, started having babies, and oh my God, 6 and 7 years later, you couldn't fit all those kids into one-room schoolhouses, and so they started building middle schools. And didn't you know, 3 years later, they started building high schools now. And if you track that baby boom, the building of single-family homes in Canton hit when those individuals got to a certain age. And our rise in assisted living facilities. And before that, the detached and attached condos designed towards the seniors' population. All that tracked with one very large baby boom, the end of World War II. And everything about Canton Township is tied to that, including why Waltonwood was built the year it was built. And what is weird is immediately after the baby boom, which was gigantic, you have Gen X, which is not very big. And that's not sustainable. And so what do you do with the high schools, the middle schools, the senior assisted living facilities, all of these things designed for 85 million Americans when the people that follow them are 45 million? And then what do you do when the millennials maybe are a little less interested in a life around an automobile? And then the next generation is like, I don't even want all this space. But we're a community with an SEV of $5 billion, all designed around the automobile, from Ford Road to Sunflower Subdivision. And we don't ever talk about that, or what we can do about that. And a lot of it is redevelopment of Ford Road and what happens in an Amazon world. A lot of it is I love the concept of nodes. I immediately took the community and started putting little places where I could see nodes, where you could have some small walkability, where you could have, I think that's so cool, and I think it's what we need to do. I love this process. I love what you're proposing. The action plan looks great. I think there's some key things that are consistent and core to my value. There are some times where we fight for wide lots. But if we fight for wide lots and less density, what are we actually telling a developer? You have to build less units. So what does that mean? They have to charge more money for that unit. So if I have the idea that affordable housing is a goal of mine, I can't want for wider lots and less density. Those are conflicting values. There are times when my NIMBYism and my social justice are at war with each other. And this is the process where we litigate that. It's really important. It's the most important work that we do in this township, with the exception of voting. That's a joke, because I'm the clerk. So I really look forward to this. I look forward to it, and I really wish, because, we all see the people when, we're approving the blessings or not approving the blessing zonings. We see those people come to us, and they honestly don't care about the Planning Enabling Act. They don't want to know the philosophy behind why you have a 5-year master plan, or why you make rational decisions, or why it's important that we don't just arbitrarily make decisions based on the whims of who's the loudest. Because in the South, they did that to communities of color, and it resulted in certain churches not being built and neighborhoods not being sold to certain people of certain colors. The government can't arbitrarily treat people different without violating their constitutional rights. This is really important work. I like this plan a lot. McKenna, I think you're heading in the right direction. I'm very excited about how it will advance. I think there are some opportunities where we might be able to preserve some green space. There are some opportunities where we can work on developing those nodes. And it would be really curious to see what the people want. But I'm always reminded of the Henry Ford quote, if I would have asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And that's the role we play as representatives in a democratic process. How do I represent people, but how do I also exercise the responsibility they gave me as their elected representative to make a specific decision, because we don't put everything up to majority vote. And thank God we don't.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, this master plan is, I think everybody's very excited and passionate about it. And I think we all have our own vision in that, so the group sessions will be excellent. Tanya?
Can you hear me? Yeah. So this is an excellent plan, McKenna, Vidya. It was an excellent presentation. And I really liked how you have approached with, at least started talking to the community. Because I feel that sometimes we are talking to the people that, are living here for years rather than people who are going to live here in the future. And you have started working with the youth. And when I talk to my 20-year-old, she doesn't want to live here. She's like, there's no downtown here. I would rather go and live in a place like Ann Arbor or Detroit or Kalamazoo rather than living here in Michigan. Although she is a diehard Midwesterner, but she doesn't want to live in Canton. So how do we do that? And how do you have already started working with, the younger community who wants to live here, who have to live here in the future. It cannot be, 3,000 square feet homes and big yards and big lots and big lawns anymore. It has to be more public spaces, more parks. So how do we, a question is for, the planning, the planners here and also to McKenna, how do we get input from the people that are least interested in providing the input, like, the younger community? How do we do that? Because when we go out in the community and we are going to ask these questions at, Rally on Ridge or Liberty Fest, you are probably going to have homeowners who have lived here for 20 plus years and who like living here in their big lots and big houses. So how do we build for the future? And how do we get an opinion from the younger generation who we want to bring into this community in the future? How do we?
Paul?
Can you hear me now? Thank you. So I had the pleasure last year of working with Leisure Services here to develop the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And during that process, I was able to engage with the community. And it was an absolute joy. And I want to speak to your question because when I was at the summer concert series in Heritage Park, and people would come up you wouldn't expect, the people who don't necessarily, they're just walking up to see what's going on. And I had a group of younger people who were coming from playing basketball, and they were talking in depth about the pros and cons of having an outdoor pool. And I think going to those types of events and engaging all of the different types of stakeholders that we have for stakeholder type meetings really targets all of those different groups that you might not normally get involved in government. You might hear from your residents that are engaged and understand the process at your regular board meetings, but being out in the community at the farmers market, at Liberty Fest, at the concert series, at those type of events, you get such a wide, diverse group of people who are thinking about if they want to continue to live here, what they need going forward, and the residents here are so intelligent, and we can just gather so much from them. So I think that we've developed a plan that will help us engage with all of those people that you want to bring into the fold.
Thank you. Stephen, did you have your hand raised?
I didn't, and I see Kate does, and I'd be glad to go after her.
Kate?
So I echo what many of the other trustees have said. First of all, I want to thank you, Vidya, for this excellent presentation. It was very comprehensive and thorough and also interesting at the same time, so that was great. I am really looking forward to the public engagement piece of this process. I know sometimes as a person, I get in a rut, and I know we have all here at the table at one time or another thought about why are we doing things the way we always do? And so I think, first of all, McKenna and our planning department are going to be really helpful in trying to think out of the box, but I think the public engagement will also provide us that, and I think it's so important because there's such a diversity in our community and such a diversity of thought also, so I think that's going to be really helpful. I had a very specific question. When you were going over the public engagement piece, I heard mentioned drone surveys, and I just wanted to get a little more information on what that is.
Sounds good. Paul, would you like to take that? Or Patrick can help you with that too.
I can lead off on that one. When looking at your corridors, they are extensive, right? And Ford Road is very different from where it is at 275 versus where it is at Napier, right? So one engaging way to get people to talk about a corridor or what they want to see there is to do a walking tour. Well, that's not possible on Ford Road. You know, if you want to know of how people cross intersections or how it is for people with disabilities, they're not going to walk that entire stretch. So it was one of our discussions, we noted that we have a drone. So looking at ways that we could, instead of doing a walking tour, is a drone corridor tour, and we can have some kind of flyovers at certain intersections. Granted, this is all very preliminary and kind of conceptual. We're working with cable studios and with our communication staff on trying to facilitate this. But the idea is to do a tour of a certain corridor or a certain node, and then couple that with a survey, with a couple of questions on what do you think about this, and what if this was here, and do you like this idea? And so that way they can feel like they're in that area without having to stand at Ford Road and back, feeling like they're going to get hit or something like that, or if it's raining or snowing or any of those other elements that we can't control. So this allows them to get into that particular area, to be a part of it, give us some feedback without having to leave the comfort of their homes. But we're still working through how we're going to facilitate the whole thing. So don't quote me on all of it, but that is the goal, is to utilize that kind of technology, because drones are used for a number of different ways, and it can be a very useful tool, and I haven't really seen it utilized for kind of public engagement. So this is something that we would be doing that's unique and different and could really lead in terms of public engagement in the new world.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
Paul, do
Stephen?
you want to add anything to that?
No, just to say that a lot of public engagement, you sort of have to do the traditional stuff, the meetings and the outreach, but I think this is a really exciting opportunity to, as you said, think out of the box. And that this particular technology gives people a way to experience their community in a way that you don't often get. So we're really excited about that and about the collateral that it will bring and the ways that it'll inform the process.
Great, thank you.
I think the opportunity of...
Oh, go ahead, Vidya.
Sorry. I think having Liberty Fest is an opportunity that most communities do not have. We are blessed that we have the opportunity, which we'll get since we have missed it for the last 2 years. I am pretty certain everybody is going to show up for it. I know my high schooler has already bought his tickets, and there are plans with all other teenagers to leave the house and not come back till it's time to go to bed, to be in the rides the whole time. And We will get the young people. I'm sure we'll have all the young families with kids in the stroller. So the younger families and also older people. It's going to be a wonderful public engagement event. It's sort of, if you could pick a textbook perfect event where we can get a slice of all demographics in the township, Liberty Fest would be it. And we are so glad that it's coming right off the bat when we are starting out on this process. So when we report back to the Master Plan Advisory Board after Liberty Fest, I think we'll have lots of interesting things come out of that public engagement session. Thank you.
Thanks. Really appreciate the approach you all are taking this time around. I enjoyed seeing the presentation. This is my third time through this. The first time I came in the middle of it, so I didn't see how it kicked off, but I saw how it ended and was a bit frustrated by it. I think we did better the last time around. I think we had quite a bit of discussion about what we could and couldn't do under the law the last time, and that was valuable, and it helped with understanding. So I'm hoping we can expand on that this time. In terms of what you all were just discussing, in terms of getting input, sometimes I chuckle when I hear people say, well, we want our children, or our children don't want us. This isn't a community our youth wants to come to. But I think about back when I was a teenager or someone in college, and if I thought that I was going to land back in my hometown, I probably would be very disappointed in myself. I wanted to go out and explore the world. And so my goal is not just to attract our own youth, but those young people from around the state and country to come here. But many do. I mean, I didn't. I'm nowhere near where I started my life, but some of us here are, and I think it's all good. But one question that I had was, can we find a way to poll people outside of our community about what they think of our community and our plans, and not just get input from our own citizens? I want to hear what other people think of our community. And I don't know what the best way is to do that. I mean, McKenna, you are more than just centered right here in our community. You have people, I'm sure, that work in other communities, and maybe that's something that you can have your operatives do in those communities. Show them the stuff that you're showing our own citizens and say, what do you think of this? And what would make you move there? So hopefully you'd be able to do that. The part of the plan that I'm really interested in is transportation and what we're going to do in terms of that, or what we think we can do in terms of that, more than, of course, alleviating traffic. Of course, that's important. We're doing things to do that, but what can we do to, as you discussed, Vidya, what can we do for those that in the future may not want to own a car or have a car? And what can we do in a community like ours? What are best practices around the world for doing those types of things? I've been disappointed in the last 5 years about the term mixed use and the type of developments that we foresee as being attractive to the next generations, and I don't think we've done enough with that. We seem to have approved plans for some of those things, and they've never come to fruition. Maybe small pieces of it. I know Cherry Hill Village is kind of bit like that, but in an old worldly way and not a modern going forward way. I've seen, I'm sure we all have seen where it's been done really well, and I'd like us to study where it's been done well and see how we can make that happen here. And then just lastly, again, being my third time around, I'm really willing to stretch the limits of what we can do under the act. I really want to push on those limits and see, are there things that, maybe we can do. And I know there's probably, a legal cost to doing that, but I'd be willing to take that on to an extent, or at least understanding it. So if there are options that might be controversial or something like that, I just want to discuss them and hear them. So that's it from my perspective.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Are there any other? Yes, Doug?
I want to piggyback on real quick to what Trustee Snyderman said. I grew up in this area. I grew up in Garden City and have lived here for 20 years, so I've seen this area grow. And much like he just said, if you would have asked me when I graduated from high school where I wanted to end up, I would have told you Boston, Washington, D.C., Chicago, all that sort of thing. So while I think it's important to get feedback from our youth, when they say they don't want to live in Canton, don't take that as gospel necessarily. I mean, my own daughter, who just graduated from Plymouth last year, we were convinced she was going to go away from here and not come back. She went away to school for a semester. She's back home now. She wanted to be closer to home. So much like their attention spans are short, sometimes their plans are very short-lived also. So again, it's important feedback, but it's not the what I would say etched in stone. I also like what Mr. Snyderman said about getting feedback somehow from the surrounding communities, because if you want to get an idea for whether people want to live in Canton or not, it's the people who live outside Canton that we want to know that we would like to come here. I don't know, and I don't know how you accomplish that and how you do it so that it's not so that it's pocketed or totally random or whatever, but I think it is valuable input. Yeah, the public engagement piece is going to be interesting because we've all lived here. Most of us have lived here a long time. We tend to go through the township with blinders on. We know what we like, we know what we don't like about Canton, but we don't know what everybody else likes and doesn't like about Canton. So it'll be important to have those other sets of eyes to hear and see what those feelings are. So I think this process will hopefully enlighten all of us quite a bit on that.
Can I just speak to the point about pulling from the outside of the community? When I was working at the Parks and Rec master plan, a lot of the people who would come into the tent were residents of the surrounding communities, Westland or Garden City, and would come into Canton to use a lot of the resources. And I think that's one way that we're at least hearing kind of, maybe not in a direct targeted fashion like a survey, but that's important input. And even before you mentioned that, something I was thinking of is those are also the people you want to be attracting. And I think it's also something we can build upon to then target in a maybe more strategic way to pull those who you might want to bring in the future.
I believe with Liberty Fest, we probably will have residents from the neighboring communities also attending. So when we have the booth trying to get an idea of where they are from, will give us an idea as to the information that they are providing. The good part also about it is McKenna happens to also be the planning consultant for Van Buren Township, which is our southern border, and also Plymouth Township, which is our northern border. And we have worked on the master plan for Van Buren Township and just finished it as of last year. So we did extensive public engagement. So we know what they don't like about their community and what they like about Canton, or what are the things they want to see happening over there. So being a planning consultant with such a wide client base, we do have an idea of what is going on in each community, what their strengths, what their challenges are. So we will be able to bring that perspective also into this whole master planning process.
Great, thank you. Greg, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I think it'll also be important to get a gauge in terms of age, and very big curiosity. My wife and I came in here in the early 90s, and we're probably double the population of that time. So obviously, there's something that Canton has done right. Is it just the housing? Is it the schooling? I think it'll be interesting to get a different perspective from different age groups as to why they are here. Why did you come here? But then a very big question that's in my mind is, what do you leave Canton for when you go to visit someplace else?
Yep.
In other words, what is it we don't have? You obviously like something about living here, but then you leave and you go someplace else to do other things, whether it be dining, recreation, whatever. The point is, we need to know that, and we need to know it from a different age perspective in terms of the use of Canton. I think we've done well in terms of housing. I think we've given a lot of different house price ranges. I think that was a goal of trustees going back 30 years to get out of that starter home and then move to Plymouth and Northville transition that was going on. So I think a lot of people do stay here, but I don't think they stay here all the time. And I think they're migrating temporarily to other places to do other things. And I'd like to know what that is and find out if that's something that we can supply and we can be a better community for engagement in keeping them here.
Thank you. Kate, did you? Summer?
Just along the lines of talking to people that are not from here, I think that's important to do when it comes to businesses and economic development as well, to find out why the businesses that we want to attract to our community and say build up like a Cherry Hill Village or throughout like the Michigan Avenue corridor or something like that aren't coming here. What can we do to make it more attractive to them to build businesses here?
Yes.
Need more car washes.
So not to stay on this topic too long, but I agree with what the last few people have said about talking to people outside of the community. And I agree, Vidya, I think Liberty Fest will be a great opportunity for that. I think a lot of people from outside of Canton come in for Liberty Fest. I also think that, some of this might be for a different meeting, for perhaps a meeting about perception or marketing. But I just wanted to describe an interaction I had on Reddit. I was in the Ann Arbor subreddit, and for people who don't know, it's like a social media forum. And in the Ann Arbor subreddit, there was a family who wrote and said they wanted to move to the Ann Arbor area, but Ann Arbor was too expensive. So, what other areas and towns and cities should they consider? And there was a lot of talk about Ypsilanti. There was a lot of talk about like Dexter, Chelsea, those areas. And so I piped in and said, "Have you considered Canton Township?" And somebody wrote back and said that it was probably the least scenic area in the Ann Arbor-Ypsi area. And also they wanted to know if I could tell them where you could go in Canton to go for a hike. So I did respond and told them about the Lower Rouge Trail, but it was just interesting, that little interaction that I had, because there is certainly, at least with this person, a perception of Canton. Also, I seem to have been one of the very few people who responded and mentioned Canton, as a possibility for this family. So anyway, just wanted to share.
Thank you. I will say, I collect the property transfers, and we have so many people moving from one home to another in Canton.
Yeah.
So I know it is a place where people want to continue to stay and maybe get a larger home or downsize.
Yeah, I'll just echo that because we do voter registrations. The one thing I was the most surprised about as clerk of Canton Township is how many individuals move inside of Canton. And that was something that was done intentionally, and it worked. And it's super cool. I mean, it's actually extremely difficult when we're trying to administer an election while people are voting absentee, but that's fine. It's not what we're talking about here today. My question is very specific. As we approach the future land use map, I know intention was made in the past to think about capacity of individuals for Canton Township. And we used, I believe, sewer capacity because you don't want to have more human beings than you have sewer capacity for obvious reasons. But one interesting caveat is if we choose to have less human beings than we have sewer capacity, I believe the Water and Sewer Fund, in extinguishing the bond on the infrastructure that was put in, we are targeting to have, I heard, up 110,000 residents. So if we choose to lower the future land use map, is there an economic impact to what that might do to water and sewer rates? That aside, if we choose, let's say we're like, oh, hey, the kids want density, let's put mixed use on the 4 road and we'll put bodies there and we add an extra 10,000 people. Are we, I would just hope that future boards would go eyes wide open into that process and not put us into a situation where we jeopardize the capacity. So I assume planning is working with DPW to ensure that we are staying faithful to that.
I can chime in a little bit, although I'm not an engineer. I can say that there's a lot that goes into there is capacity for your sewer system, but when you look at water rates and sewer rates in the future, a lot of it comes down to just the maintenance of the system that you have as well. So although users obviously put more work on the system, it's going to come down to the Board of Trustees and the administration to make sure, not soon, but as we move forward, 5, 10, 15 years, that we're maintaining the system that we do have, regardless of how many users are on it. Because that's where you're going to see your big spikes and your big liabilities come into play. And then as far as going over capacity, you can always build more. I mean, that's the real simple term. So if you wanted to go over what the capacity is today, we'd have to work with engineering to make sure that everything was appropriate.
And
maybe there's some areas that you can't, sorry, Patrick, but there's definitely studies out there, and we can do individual studies if there was the need and the future, if the wishes of the board were to adopt a plan where it increased capacity.
Yeah, and I was going to say exactly what you had ended with, is that we've had many conversations with our engineering division about not just our current future land use map, which has a synchronous relationship with our sewer plan, but also looking ahead when we do update the master plan without knowing what the future land use will look like. It's something that we've talked a lot to our engineering division about in terms of when the time comes where there are changes being made to the future land use map proposed during the master plan process, we can always, as an aside, a parallel process, they can run sewer studies in certain areas to see if a proposed density change will work within the system. So they're aware of this process that'll be going forward, and that's something that we'll be communicating with engineering throughout, just to make sure that by the time we get to the end of the process that we've done those studies, at least on a preliminary basis.
Thank you.
Okay, that was helpful. That's good to know. Go ahead.
I just wanted to interject that Supervisor Hudak has had her hand raised on Zoom for quite some time now.
You can't see that, Anne Marie.
Yeah, she's had her hand raised, so if we could just.
Thank you. Supervisor Hudak, please, sorry about that.
Thank you, Vidya. That's very nice of you. I'm also very sorry I can't be with all of you. I am quarantined at home, as you could probably hear. So I'm sorry I can't be with you, but thank you for the wonderful presentation. I think it was great. And I just would like to probably echo some of what I've heard and just make sure that you're getting some of the input that I've been listening to in other meetings. Just for one, according to the last census, so Michigan is one of the top 3 states for brain drain. That's a fact that we need to plan on reversing. So I just want to make sure, it was a really good report given by the Local Impact Alliance, which used to be the Canton Community Foundation. They really have good statistics on the surrounding data for showing that we're a high-tech community. We also have with Ann Arbor and Detroit there. That's a big part of that. We also are a community that employs a lot of healthcare employees with a lot of the medical facilities around and the hospitals around. So those are really two things we should probably be looking at also for a corridor. Also, I'd like to ask that, so not only include the census data, because you can see for the past 10 years the brain drain in Michigan. And it also shows you that, different communities that happened in. So we can really get some good solid data on what we've been seeing in Canton and how we might want to try to reverse some of that. Also, I'd ask that you include the chamber. I know I've heard a lot of talk about the businesses. Thomas Payne is really good at getting surveys out there if we want to kind of survey some of the businesses ourselves. Jobs in high tech, that's excellent because that's exactly what we're planning to do along Michigan Avenue. That's part of our goals and our strategy, and it's important to keep the jobs here because we have the smart residents in high tech and healthcare. And so it is important to create this corridor, and we're working hard with the Ross Business School, which will start hopefully helping us in September, as well as bringing businesses in to interview them and bringing in some of the engineering students to get some of their ideas. Transportation, in my previous job, with some of the data that we saw is most of our youth don't want to drive. And like you said, Vidya, we were built around driving. So how do we start to reverse that? How do we look at these, our youth want to walk and bike and Uber. So how do we bring that? And also our seniors, they get to a point where they can't drive anymore. I've taken the keys from grandparents and parents. And so how do we, work with them? Mixed use also will hopefully come to fruition along a development that was approved along Michigan Avenue. So I think Michigan Avenue's got a lot of things we can look forward to soon. And I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with in this plan. I also heard the comment about people leaving and people coming and going. And I have to be careful with people not leaving. And I get teased by a supervisor just south of us that after people in Canton, they have their kids here, the kids grow up, they retire, and then they go down to his community to live on a lake, and I think that's great. That's fine. Or they go down to Florida. Over in Westland, the mayor there tells me, why am you losing my people over to Canton? They start moving west. So I think that's a natural ebb and flow, and I think that that's okay, because I think that's why we have so much of our diversity, because we experience a lot of that. So I think that we cultivate that. And like you said, at the Liberty Fest, they'll be here to talk to us. But can you tell me, are you planning on using some of the census data that shows some of the trends that we're seeing?
Paul, would you like to? We have a few boards planned for Liberty Fest. The key is not to have too much information out there that will confuse the public, because for many people, this will be the first time they are engaged in anything to do with the master plan. So we intend to have a few informational boards on what is the master plan and how it's different from a zoning ordinance. And we are still in the process of designing information boards. So having information pertaining to growth might be a good idea. Paul has got experience, Paul and Jane both have experience in putting together information that gets the best response and feedback from the public. So we can probably look into that too. Do you have any input in there, Paul?
No, just if the question was, are we using census data as part of the analysis? The answer is yes. That's sort of one of many data points that we use to do that first phase that Vidya was talking about. And that baseline understanding informs everything else we do, including the seeds of the public engagement questions.
Okay, did you need also a contact to the chamber maybe to get some of the business data also? Because they definitely always give their input.
Yes, I have consulted with the chamber and have been in communication with him. So we are working out a strategy to work together and facilitate some engagement with him and with the chamber.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hudak. Doug, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I did, and Supervisor Hudak touched on a little bit. I wanted to talk about the technology piece a little bit because I heard, again, going back to the engagement with the high school kids, one of the things they talked about, the reason they don't come here or want to stay here is because there's not, and maybe I misheard it, but so correct me if I'm wrong, there's not high-tech jobs here. It's not like downtown Ann Arbor or around the University of Michigan or Silicon Valley in California or whatever. I think one thing we have to be, and to a degree that's true, and I hear talk about developing the Michigan Avenue corridor, but one thing I think we have to be mindful of a little bit, especially as we talk about retrofitting commercial space and all that sort of thing, we have to be mindful of how the job market has changed in this country after COVID. One thing we don't want to have, and we may, unfortunately, we're not like Southfield or Troy where there's just endless office buildings, but we don't want to end up with a bunch of empty office buildings. More people are working remotely. And I think it's more important that we have the infrastructure in place to be high tech so that people can work from wherever, hopefully in Canton. But whether we become, and I get tired, I think the term smart city gets overused quite a bit, but to be that way, I mean, that's one of the things I think young people are looking for is that cool factor. I just had the opportunity to spend some time in Denver, and downtown Denver around their convention area is very much like that with technology, small cells, and the way their transportation is. You see the scooters all over town and all that sort of thing, and there's lots of bars, and that's the kind of thing I think young people want to see, but I think technology is at the root of that, and particularly the infrastructure. We're going to be ripping up Ford Road here, hopefully sometime. I think we have a great opportunity to do things along Ford Road, and Michigan Avenue is sort of untapped in a lot of ways too. So I think we have a lot of opportunity here to, even though I don't think we're reinventing the wheel here with Canton, but I think we are having an opportunity to really move ourselves deeper into the next century and still kind of keep some of the values that we've developed over the last 50 years.
Yeah.
Excellent point. Nancy?
Well, I'm trying to think of how to say this in a way that isn't negative towards Canton. Because one of the things I think that's great about Canton is it's affordable. And that's what, in that Reddit post, the person was talking about, where can I live that is affordable? And if we become too cool, we're not going to be affordable. I think we continue to be a great place to live. I think that for a lot of families that have raised their kids here, this is a great place. I think we encourage to have more parks, talk about walkways, places where people can walk around and maybe a connecting thing. But if we want to try and become something like an Ann Arbor,
Yeah.
people won't be able to afford to live here, and I think maybe that's a little bit of a moonshot, too. I don't think Canton will ever become... Well, but I don't want us to ignore what is great about Canton, and that is that I think it's a great place to raise a family. I think that there's a lot of opportunities for kids and families to do things, and it's a place that you can afford to live while maybe working somewhere near here. I mean, we are a bedroom community, and that's where we've done well. So I think we should keep that in mind.
Thank you. All of these are so important, the input. You guys have a lot you're going to be working with, but we appreciate all of everyone's input on that because it's going to be important. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Yes. I think we need to think about housing and density, and not just multifamily housing, but also, are we going to allow ADUs? As people have multi-generational living, do we want to have a community where we don't allow that? Do we want to have a community where we have, like others have said, different price points for people to live in different areas, things like that? I think, and I also I realize that a lot of the homeowner association bylaws would preclude having any kind of, I mean, I can't even put an accessory structure in my backyard, let alone an ADU in Glengarry Village, but is there a way we can kind of encourage, encourage the HOAs to kind of come to the 21st century about living opportunities and density?
Yeah, that's a good point with housing, and that's something that we spend a lot of time thinking about in the planning division as we get applications in. Right now, across the spectrum of housing in Canton, there's a high demand for single-family, detached condos, attached condos, multifamily, housing for the elderly. It just seems the last few years, the spectrum is high demand. But meanwhile, we're also thinking about one of the slides in the presentation that had like ADUs, different types of duplexes, different types of housing arrangements that maybe not necessarily in the zoning ordinance or something that has evolved to a point where the zoning ordinance no longer covers it. And in terms of ADUs, that's definitely something that we want to talk to people about in the master plan. And there is probably a place for it in Canton, and that's what we want to find out. And if associations, through their covenants and bylaws and whatnot, if a lot of them continue to prohibit that, there are a lot of residential parcels in Canton that are not subject to HOAs. And if there are good places for those, if they're successful and people see that ADUs, they're not as impactful, they're in a lot of ways innocuous, where you can't really tell from the street, and there's a great benefit both for the person who may live there and benefit from the extra income of owning the place, and the person who's renting out that can find a place affordable. That's a way of bridging the housing gap that a lot of communities have done. A lot of communities and a lot of states have started to do away with single-family residential zoning. So in some cases, the law is ahead of our zoning, and we want to catch up. And then perhaps if it's seen as ADUs not being such a big deal in the future in places where they're placed throughout the township, maybe that will encourage some HOAs to say, we see it all over the township in different areas, and as it relates to our area, they might start adapting and changing their mind about it.
Those exist in Cherry Hill Village, don't they? I believe some of the models have.
I think so.
Some of the models have an exterior accessible flat for like teenagers to live it when they go to college. Yeah, there's a model inside the Biltmore, Cherry Hill Village that has ADUs. It's pretty cool.
If I could add too, another thing I enjoy seeing, and I think we need to think about, our streetscapes. And we have these big, huge box stores. It's been mentioned earlier here that they're probably not all going to exist in 20 years. I appreciate the efforts that the planning department has made to put in outlots and encourage buildings in these big parking lots that are maybe fully occupied, never. But can we think about like driving down Ford Road? What do we want? Like you said, the drone surveys may help us to figure this out. But what do you want to see as you're driving down Ford Road? And I'm amused because every once in a while I accidentally open Nextdoor and read the comments about some of the latest developments here. And I remember one of the big controversies a few years ago was, and maybe even still is, how close we permitted the Art Van store to be to the street. It's like, that was totally within the setbacks, but so I think we need to keep thinking about that too. Like, what's the experience of a driver through the city or through the township going to be like, and what's going to happen to all these huge parking lots and huge buildings that may or may not be serving us in the future.
Thank you. Any other? Michael?
Yeah, and I'll be brief on this one. I do like the idea of visiting the amount of parking that we require, because I do feel like excessive parking requirements are a really awesome tool to it's a tool to make development more challenging, and so some people kind of like it, but it also like, yeah, I have not seen a lot of our parking lots at 100% capacity, so I do think, especially if we get to a point where, and we will, we have autonomous vehicles no longer sitting stationary. How we interact with parking spaces is going to be substantially different than we do now, right? Because my car will never stop working, so there's no need to sit stationary in a parking lot. It'll drop me off at the door like an Uber and then leave and then pick me up when I'm ready. That will be awesome. But what does that mean to these giant parking lots that are extremely bad for the environment too? And then I really love, Nancy, the comments that you had made. You know, yeah, Canton will always be a suburban community. We are never going to be Ann Arbor. And honestly, I moved to Canton. I didn't move to Ann Arbor intentionally. And I wouldn't live in Ann Arbor if I could afford it. I would live in Canton because I like this community. I don't want to pretend to be another community. There are good bedroom suburban communities that do edgy things too. And we in a lot of ways, that's us also. So yeah, there will be people, you know, who don't like roads, who crap on us, who say like, oh, you know, you need to do road diets. You should have bikers on Ford Road because, I don't know, they want to see more fatalities, I guess. Like, you know, it's Canton is Canton, and there's billions and billions of dollars have made it Canton. And we can't just do that, nor should we, because I don't know about you guys, but I've been looking at houses. Good luck trying to buy a house in Canton, you know? So it's not like we have a short-term need to fill housing or retail space in Canton. That's a long-term problem. And then again, I would recommend using using that ESRI business analyst tool, because I really don't like surveys. Some people do really good job polling and surveying, and it's very scientific. But a lot of surveying is extremely biased. And like, if you ask me, I eat a salad for lunch, I listen to NPR, I never watch TV, I go for a jog every night, you know, I never swear in front of my kids, right? Like, but none of that's true. That's all like aspirational stuff. So be mindful that sometimes people tell you they want something, and then they go eat a burger when no one's looking. So we gotta be mindful of that when we're, you know, that's why I like quantifiable data, and the human brain is not like the most reliable way to get quantifiable data about their actual habits. It's like when I look at my phone, it's like, your screen time's been up by 17% this week, and I'm like, oh man, I had no idea I was on my phone all this time. But the machine knows. Can't fool the machine. You can fool the brain, but you can't fool that machine.
Thanks, Michael.
I'm done.
So,
She gave me the hook.
Victor has his hand up also, Diane.
so I think it's going to help with doing a lot of the group sessions and, you know, hearing from everybody so that we get a good idea of what we want to do. So I do appreciate all this. Are there any other questions or comments?
Victor has his hand up. He's online.
Oh, Victor? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. A lot has been said about the technology hub, particularly with regards to Ford Road, and I took a little bit of an interest in the survey that was going to be conducted. And perchance, are you, with the drone, are you basically mapping that and putting that into a virtual reality so we can create the experience in a different way? Just pushing the envelope.
I'm all for pushing the envelope as much as we possibly can. That sounds like a wonderful idea, and certainly working with cable. So trying to figure out the best way to do it. If we can do it within a virtual reality scope, that would be amazing. But I can't speak to what we can and can't do. I've never operated or used a drone, so this is kind of new for me. But you know, that will be coming in the process in the future. So I can keep you updated on how that shakes out, but I can't give you any absolute definite for sure of what we're going to do because we haven't quite mapped it out 100% yet.
Fair enough. Thank you.
There.
If they let me, but I don't, I wouldn't let me.
Are there any other questions or comments? Anybody online that does have a question or comment? Any hands raised?
Nope, I don't see any.
See any? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
I have a quick comment. So I just, I heard Victor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, so Victor had this comment about technology, and I'm just wondering, like, a lot of conversation was included about the technology corridor and things like that. So we right now have started a technology committee in Canton Township with some of the people who live in the township, and they're coming with some ideas, and I am hoping that Okay, so we have a technology committee now in Canton with, some of the stakeholders who are employees of the community, board members, and also the community members. Maybe just like you talk to the social justice group, maybe have a conversation with them too when you are, thinking about the master plan in terms of technology and future and things like that.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? This has been very, very interesting. I appreciate everybody joining us. And with that, I'm going to ask for any public comment. Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? How about online?
Nope.
No? Okay. Well, with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this meeting is done. Thank you all.